It is Dukes and Bell. We're brought to you and driven by Kia. For more info, visit atlkia.com. More NBA discussion coming your way, guys, and more about Dwight Howard. If you've not heard what he had to say about playing in front of the home crowd, giving his family a chance to play, a chance to see him play, you'll get a chance to hear it coming up here on the show. Today, Randy Mack is in for Mike Bell, and Mike continues to be on vacation. Got a couple of texts from him. We texted back and forth. He's having a great time and looking forward
Show off.
Yeah, he is. You see that, right? Getting back to it, next week is we'll be at SEC Media Week next week in Hoover, Alabama.
Hoover?
Yeah.
Who's driving?
That I'm not sure. We're trying to work those arrangements out as we speak right now. So, driving with Mike is putting your life
That's
in
what
your
I'm saying. That's why I said who's driving.
Because he can be crazy like that.
I value my life. I'm going solo.
Yeah. Mike drives, he drives reckless sometimes. With that said, we'll figure all that out, but he'll be back next week. Randy's in the rest of the week with us. And I want to bring into the show, joining us to talk about an upcoming charity event, but also about life lessons that I think sometimes we take for granted. And first of all, Mike, thank you for coming in. I appreciate you, spending some time with us here on the program. The second annual Lutzie43 road race is coming up. That's August 6th at Lassiter High School. We'll give you more information about it. But Mike Lutzenkirchen is in studio with us. His son was Philip. And if you're not familiar, War Eagle, I know we have a lot of Auburn fans that listen to this show, and certainly we got a lot of Auburn alums in Atlanta. But Philip played at Lassiter High School, was recruited across the country, could have chose anywhere to go to school after his days in high school. He decides to go play at Auburn. Was fortunate enough to play with a group of guys that ended up winning a national championship in 2010 with Cam Newton and company. And he was an integral part of that run. But when you get a chance to hear, and this family like I do, you start to hear the stories about their son and all the off-the-field things that he was involved in. And to hear the story it's heartbreaking. It really is. But, Mike, thank you for coming in, because I think there are a lot of people who may know the story, and then there's some people who may not. And we want to make them aware of it, and then we want to make them aware of what's going on and how you're moving forward. So thanks for coming in today.
Hey, Carl, it's an honor to be here. Thanks for having me.
So let's start first with just talking about Philip. And, always played sports, always was involved and loved it. And I don't know if you knew that he would get to the heights that he did at the point where he was at Auburn and having the success he had. But he enjoyed it, and you always backed him.
Yeah, he's a third of four kids. We're blessed with three daughters. And, he went to Auburn, just fell in love with Auburn early, had offers from all over the country. Sitting here with a Georgia T-shirt across from me. I got my oldest daughter who went to Georgia, so I'm a dog fan. And Philip just told Mark Rick early, Coach, no disrespect, but I'm not going to go to Georgia. So many kids from Lassiter to go to Georgia. I kind of want to go out on my own. And for whatever reason, I don't know if I really know why, he fell in love with Auburn early on, and he endured through that when the change made from Tommy Tuberville to Gene Chizik. Just told him to hang tight. It's a school you chose for many reasons. And Coach Malzahn came in and recruited him with Gene, and Philip had a magical 4 years there.
He really did. And the thing is, there were so many big plays and that it seems like he was involved in. And on the field, he was great. But this story really isn't about that. It's about his accomplishments, certainly what he was able to do in his life. But this is about now what happened with Philip and how we help others to maybe not have that happen in their lives. So I just want to take you back to the day and what was going on and what happened and how did you find out?
June's been a tough month. His birthday's June 1st. I used to say he would have been. I've learned to say he is. He'd be 25. And then the accident that took his life was June 29th. It happened in LaGrange. So here's a kid that went down to Auburn. I always tell people who come down here, you can go into Hartsfield and be in Auburn faster than you can be out in Athens. So, just across the state lines is what's make the difference. But we really didn't know what he was going on that weekend with him. We thought he was going to come home that weekend, and he loved to go to Auburn. He was living in Montgomery at that time. His dream of playing in the NFL kind of got waylaid with some significant injuries to his hip and his shoulder. And when he got cut by the Rams, he just walked away and said, Dad, I've got a job offered to me in Montgomery. I'm going to take it. I don't need to have another major surgery. I don't need football. I'm good to go. And that's what he was doing. And he went to a farm that weekend. And, knowing my son, he drove a pickup that he called Lady Hulk because it was Hunter Green. And he was going to park it that weekend at this farm that he was invited to. And, ironically, we didn't know any of the kids that were there that weekend, but never questioned it once because Philip just hung around with people of character. So I know all those kids there were good kids. And from From what we've learned, he's going to do two things that day, or that weekend, that he had never done in his life. He grew up in Chicago, moved down here at age 6. He had never ridden a horse up at that point in his life, and he'd certainly never gone mudding. So he was going to do that weekend. But I know him. He's going to park that truck at 9 o'clock on Saturday morning, and it wasn't leaving until 5 o'clock on Sunday. And then they started drinking. He's 23 years old. He drank to an excessive amount that he wasn't known to drink at. And, because he'd made a name for himself and become a celebrity down in Auburn, the media couldn't wait to get his BAC. And about 8 weeks after he passed away, it was off the charts. And I've just got it on my heart. I don't hide from it. Doesn't change the story. It was .377. Most people know .08 is the legal drink, your drunk or intoxication level, if you will. And Philip was a backseat passenger in a vehicle, and the kids had been drinking. And the combination of nobody looking out for each other is my take on it when I go talk. In this foundation we've created, I've delivered about 160 talks. Was out with the Rams 2 weeks ago. I'm going to go tonight to Charlotte to speak to Charlotte 49ers football program tomorrow. And I'm on this kick right now that, I think kids know what a good friend is, but I'm not sure they know what a great friend is. And that's kind of the message. I believe Philip was a good friend that day, and as were his friends. And at some point, good friends just keep doing what they're doing, entertaining each other. In my opinion, a great friend, if Philip had been a great friend that weekend, he would have stepped back and said, I'm done. I'm done for the night. I'm going to go pass out. I'm going to go drink water. I'm going to do whatever. And everybody else should stop. And I make it crystal clear to people, nobody forced Phil to do anything that weekend. That's just, he was a 23-year-old that had responsibilities, I think, that many 23-year-olds didn't have. And you know that playing at your level. People look up to you, and he really carried that label really, really strong to his heart. But that particular day, he let it go. And it led to them getting in a vehicle at 2:30 in the morning because one of the buddies wanted to go get a can of dip. They were in a remote area that not many of them were familiar with. I know Philip wasn't. Philip climbed in the back seat of a Chevy Tahoe, and they got their dip, and then they were speeding, and then they missed a stop sign, and three of them weren't wearing seatbelts. And I'm pretty crystal clear with kids when I speak, and I tell them one of my last memories of my son is he's part of an accident report, and he's a stick figure that's laying 15 feet from a vehicle because he wasn't wearing a seatbelt. And unfortunately, the driver wasn't wearing a seatbelt, and Philip and a good friend lost their lives. And we're just, again, God's put on our heart that, we could have lived in a hole as a family, which we did for about 2 weeks, believe me. And that's not the choice we wanted. And I know my son, he wouldn't want that. And there'll be a day I'll be back with my son someday, and I'll understand why that all this occurred at his age of 23. But I think God's got a plan and a will for all of us. I don't know if any of us know what it is long term. I certainly don't know mine, but I'm crystal clear what it is short term, and it's to be doing what we're doing with the foundation.
Well, you're doing great work. It's Dukes and Bell. Randy Mack is in today for Mike, and he's alluding to Randy playing at Georgia and understanding this and being
that brotherhood when you're out with your teammates, and you could never know when something like this happens. Just like he said, going for a can of dip, that's it, and not knowing that this guy. Because I remember when it happened the day after my birthday, so I remember that. My question to you was, how soon, because you said you like 2 weeks, your family was just, at its lowest. How soon after that did you get together and say, we're going to start a something in his memory? How long did it take you to get that done?
Randy, our daughter Ann, and I'm blessed. 3 of the 4 kids went and played Division I sports. Ann played soccer at Winthrop University up near Charlotte and Rock Hill, and then Abby, the youngest, she went and played soccer at Alabama, just graduated. So we've been a sports-oriented family, probably arguably too center-minded on sports, if you will. But I don't remember the exact day, but it was within 2 to 3 weeks after Philip had passed away. Ann came to me, and as a father, it was hard to hear. He says, Dad, if this was one of the girls, we wouldn't have a platform. But because it was Philip and his personality, and because he played football, and he was a national championship and a starter and a 2-year captain, and we've got a unique last name that people may not know how to say, but they remember it's different than Smith or Jones. Ann said, we've got to do something. And I tell the story when I go talk, and it's a true story. I went running the morning after Philip passed away. So you would ask me, how did we find out? Mm-hmm. Our 2 older girls weren't living at home at the time, and we were blessed to have them home that Saturday night. And we all went to Mass, Transfiguration Catholic Church up in Marietta, Sunday morning. We came back, and there was a note on our door. And that's how we found out. The police had sat out our house for about 30 minutes. We were told after the fact, and when we weren't there, they finally left a note, and I called a number, and it was a 706 area code. And I knew that wasn't good, and none of us knew where Philip was, which is unusual. Somebody at least usually knew where he was. And then some friends started to text Amy, who's our oldest, who's become very good friends most of Philip's friends at Auburn, they're older than him. He just migrated to older kids. I think he always understood the pecking order. So Amy's 3 years older than Philip. She became very good friends with kids that were redshirt seniors, Philip's freshman year and so forth. But called a number, and it was Troup County, and got ultimately to the coroner, who did his job. He just simply said Philip was in an accident last night and didn't make it. And that's how our family found out. So about 3 weeks later, Ann said, what are we going to do? And the day after, I had gone for a run a little bit. And there's a beautiful park up in Marietta and Roswell, actually, where you live, called Lita Thompson. It's about a 2.5 mile track. You go running in the woods. And for whatever reason, you're crying. This is less than 24 hours later. And I just had it in my heart. It's if I was looking right at God, quite frankly. And Philip was just right there on my shoulder, smiling at me with his big smile and saying, it's okay. And you go through this whole range of emotions. Like, what do you mean it's okay? It's not okay. How did you do what you did? And why did you do what you did? And why didn't anybody look out for each other? And it very quickly dawned on me, I won't get those answers until the day I'm blessed to go where I hope to go. And there's a story we tell about a young girl that Philip met that was 10 years old at the time. He was a junior, and this little girl was going through cancer. Her name's Bailey Moody. She's a phenomenal young lady. She'll be a freshman in high school up in Alpharetta this year. But she was having to go through a decision of having her right leg amputated above her knee, and does she get a prosthetic leg that wouldn't be very functional, or do they do something radical surgery-wise and take that right ankle and right foot and place it where her right knee was? And they believed they could give her a special prosthetic leg and she'd be able to run. And Philip learned of her through the Auburn family, and he came home his junior year, and we met Bailey. And I just reverted back to that meeting of Philip and Bailey that next morning when he passed away, because I started to think of words that we thought represented who Philip was, at least who I thought was. So I went right back to that Starbucks and wrote them all down on a series of napkins and took those words home. And when Ann came to me 2 weeks after Philip passed away and said, what are we going to do? I kind of pulled out this list of words and said, I've been thinking about doing a curriculum. And she's like, what a great, awesome idea. So we've created this curriculum called 43 Lessons to Legacy, which is Philip's number. And there's authors in it that you wouldn't know. There's authors you certainly know. Gus Malzahn, Gene Chizik, Tom Rinaldi, Bo Jackson. Bo's a board member for us. Nick Saban, former players at Alabama that played against Philip or were in the recruiting time when Philip was being recruited. We just gave him a template and gave him some ideas of what we wanted to do. And man, it turned out great. It's 43 Lessons to Legacy. It's a character development curriculum. It's available. We've got about 30 schools using it right now. We're getting ready to do a media push. But we really think it's going to make a difference for kids 12 to 24 in just their daily thought process and really help their coaches. I'm blessed. I think I told the guys off air, my sister-in-law Kate was in town last night. She's the women's basketball coach at the University of Miami. So you're talking about Dwight Howard earlier. We're sitting behind him at the Dream Game last night, and our daughter Ann walks right up and gets her picture with him. And we went to dinner with Breanna Stewart after it because Kate coached Breanna in the World Games. But her team used this curriculum last fall, and she'll tell you it was the most satisfying year off the court as far as the closeness of her team. And it was all driven, in Kate's opinion, due to using one of the words each day after practice or a game for 43 straight days. So I'm excited about the curriculum and what it can do for kids. And I'm excited what it can do for coaches because in the coaching profession, when I ask the question, how many coaches get it right from A to Z? What I mean by that is off the field, on the field, there's a lot of coaches that get kids bigger, faster, stronger, do a great job in a practice environment, and can light up a scoreboard in their respective sports. But most sport coaches that we touch are at the high school level. They're not doing it for the income. They're doing it because, in my opinion,
they love it.
They love it, and they've been put there for a reason.
Right.
And this hopefully is a tool that will help them be a better coach with the relationship with their kids for off their field and help their kids make better decisions.
When and we're visiting, by the way, with Mike Lutzenkirchen here on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game. It's Dukes and Bell. When I got a chance to talk to Mike about this, and ironically, we are neighbors. We live literally behind each other. And he brought up a phrase to me that I had not heard when we talked about this. And we did not know each other. We knew each other through neighbors and people telling us stories about what's going on. And you should meet this guy and how he might be able to help. But you said we're God dots. I think that's a term you used.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden now we've connected, and there's so many other people that we know, not knowing each other. And the point is that I thought the message was something that a lot of people needed to hear. We have children. We have kids that play sports. We have, activities that are going on. But this to me was bigger than that. And that's why I bring it to our audience here at 92.9 The Game, because it's not about Auburn. It's not about, a specific school. This is the story of his son, Philip, but it applies to anybody. And I think the message and the lessons of legacy that I have in my hand right now, and as I was going through it, was impressive. And, a kid that grew up in sports and played at a high level, I get this and I understand it. And we said it. Randy and I were talking about this before you came in, Mike. This could be anybody's child. And so because of it, if we can avoid it, down the road from somebody, just helping one person, that's what we want to do. We're going to tell you about the race that's coming up. That's going to happen August 6th. We're also going to tell you what Nick Saban did. Because, I want him to share this story, and I don't know how much of it he will share, but a lot of people, and I think we get, mixed thoughts about how a particular coach might be. But when you hear people reaching out in times of need, it helps you understand really what kind of people they are. So when we come back, we'll tell you more about the foundation, how you can get involved with the big run that's going to happen on August 6th, and also a story about Nick Saban here on Dukes and Bell. It is Dukes and Bell, and we will get back to our hoops conversation. Hawks, talk some Falcons along the way. Falcon Report coming your way at 5. Also, we'll talk some more college football with Dennis Dodd. He's got his coaches on the hot seat, and we'll get into that with Dennis Dodd along with some other things. Right now, in studio with us to honor the memory of former Lassiter and Auburn tight end Philip Lutzenkirchen. His father, Mike, is in studio with us. Go to the website, guys. I'm going to spell it out for you because, as Mike said, we do have an unusual last name, and people will remember it. But the foundation, and for more information, it's LUTZIE43, the number, .org. All right, LUTZIE43.org. And so the second annual race is going to happen at Lassiter High School on August 6th. So you can get more information about that, how you can be a participant and just come out and support. And before we get to that, I do want you to just tell the story about how many folks reached out and were a part of helping put this together, the lessons of legacy. And you told me an interesting story about Nick Saban, and we know coaches, from what we see, and I'm not talking about the media, I'm just saying from a fan's perspective, he's all business, and you see him and you understand what he's about. And that's why I think he's the greatest college football coach, at least right now, this decade, this era. There's no debating it. 5 championships. He's chasing Bear Bryant. And so, the time constraints for him have to be tough. But when this happened, you told me he was a guy that certainly reached out to you and said, whatever you need. And it was an interesting story.
Yeah, there's been a lot of tough days in the last 2 years. And one of the most toughest days was that day we learned of Philip passing away. Our youngest daughter, Abby, was actually coming back from Jacksonville, Florida, rehabbing an ankle surgery and was getting ready for a junior year of soccer to Auburn or to Alabama. And once, I guess if you use the term, we got our composure back an hour after learning of this, it dawned on me, Abby's going to find us out through social media. So it's just crushing to know that your daughter's going to be riding a bus for 5 hours with really a lot of teammates she doesn't know that are just playing together for the summer. And then the next day that became really tough was the day we had to take her back, which was the first day of fall camp for football. So it was about August 1st, and I just made a call out to Nick's office. He knew of me, obviously, because of Philip. He recruited Philip. I didn't really know who I was, and he took the call through his secretary, and I just said, Nick, I'm bringing Abby back. I don't quite frankly know if Nick even knew that Abby was a player there. And I said, I just need some time with you. And he said, you got it. So that first day of fall camp, he gave us 20 minutes in his office. And if you know Nick, he's on a pretty regimented schedule. But he was very patient, took his time with us. And I said, Nick, we're going to do a foundation. It's a very preliminary thought process. I don't even know, quite frankly, what we're going to do. I've been asked to go talk a couple times already. So those are getting lined up. And all he said to me was, when you're ready, come to me and tell me what you need. I said, I'll do that. So then it was pretty interesting. Last year, I actually had a meeting with him the day of his visit to the SEC Media Days and met in his office. And I had already had about 12 days of the curriculum completed by some authors, and one of them was Brian Vogler, the tight end at Alabama that Philip helped recruit to Auburn, and Philip didn't do a good job recruiting because Brian went to Alabama. But he ended up kind of becoming a big brother to Abby over there, which was another, quite frankly, a god dot. And I already had that page of Brian's done and kind of opened up because I wasn't sure how Nick, quite frankly, would react when I said, Nick, here's the favor I need. We've created a template, very few rules to it. But what we're looking for is you to pick a word, and we'll give you a couple words, or you can choose a word. Words that we believe describe who Philip is, and we'd like you to author a day in the curriculum. And each day of the curriculum is the definition of the word, the author's name, a 500-word use of the word, ideally the author's relationship with Philip in the use of the word, a scripture passage, and then a quote, and then applications for the coaches, mentors, teachers to put into play, and then their student athletes or students. And before I could finish with the request to ask of Nick, he said, I want to do the word discipline. And I think people look at Nick and they see this guy that's just always serious, always focused, which I believe that he is. But I kind of just chuckled at him because of who I am. And I said to him, I bet you do. And he went in to tell me why he wanted to use the word discipline. And he already had the thought process of how he's going to use it in his relationship with Philip. And then the tough part was I wanted to get this curriculum done, quite frankly. And this was the first day of fall camp. I said, Nick, here's the request I've got. I got to have that before you go to fall camp or before you this was media days, I asked him. So I need to have this before you go to fall camp. And sure enough, within 3 weeks, he turned around his work, and it was phenomenal. But then we had the next event coming up on our agenda. And we've really created about 5 assets for the curriculum right now. And another one is we just did our inaugural golf invitation out in Sylacauga at a beautiful place called Farm Links. David Purcell and the Purcell family are all Auburn grads. They opened up the course to us to do a fundraiser there to help fund these $4,300 scholarships that are tied to the curriculum and help us to get the curriculum into underprivileged schools. And David said, Mike, these can be $10,000 foursomes if you get the right celebrities. So we said, wow, okay. I don't ask too many people to do $10,000 foursomes. I'm lucky if I ask them to do a $100 player fee, but okay. And he said, who do you think you can get? I said, I'm pretty sure I can lock down Gus. And, Tom Rinaldi's offered me to do anything he can to help because we got to know Tom through all this. And Tom did a wonderful day in the book called, he did the word joy. But I said, he goes, what about Nick? He said, if you can get Nick to this event that's going to be predominantly, I'm assuming, Auburn guys, that'd be huge. He's coming off a national championship, who he is and recognizability. And I said, well, I'm arrogant enough to think I can certainly ask. And I'm confident I might be able to get him. And I ended up recruiting Gus to help me get Nick, which was phenomenal. And Nick said yes, and he asked me to call him, and I called him. And after Gus had helped recruit him, and he said, Mike, I want to do this because I believe in what you're doing. And my wife doesn't believe I do some things I do. And he said, let me get back to you on how many hours I'm available that day. And I had already scripted it out. So I said, Nick, I don't call him Nick. I call him Nick. I said, Nick, I think I've got that for you. I've got you getting there at 9:30 and leaving at 7:30. And we're going to finish the night with a Q&A, a fireside chat that Tom Rinaldi's going to host, where he's going to be in an overstuffed chair in the middle and Gus on one side and you on the other. And he just kind of looked at me and said, okay. And what I've learned through people in the program, I'm a firm believer. Nick Saban's a lot different than me, but he puts his pants on the same way every day. And I just don't know that enough people ask him for things. And my wife tells me, you don't ask him, you tell him. And I'm like, well, that's not my intention. But I've had people tell me, Mike, he appreciates you doing that because he wants to help, and I think some people are afraid to help. So I've kind of got a reputation with Abby playing Auburn or soccer at Alabama. I don't ever say Roll Tide without saying soccer. So I say Roll Tide soccer, and I'll never root for Alabama football when they play Auburn. True blue there, but I'll tell you what, he's another good guy. He's a guy that gets the big picture. Does he want to win? Does he run maybe the most regimented program in the country? My guess is yes, but he understands the game that these kids are involved in is not the biggest football game, Randy, you've ever played, and it's the game of life. And that's why I think
100%.
That's why I think Nick joined us.
It's just one of the many stories as people have helped along the way, and we continue to help, and we're doing our part. I'm going to be a part of this, the second annual Lutzie43 road race scheduled for August 6th at Lassiter High School. Again, go to the website, lutzkie43.org for more information. Race is going to start and end at Lassiter High School. The field, by the way, if you're not familiar, is named now after Philip. So they did that last year, and that'll forever be there. But that's where the race is going to take place. And we want to see you out there, man. We want to see you a part of this. And as you said, there'll be other events. If you go on the website, you'll get a chance to see as we move down the road that we'll be a part of. But it's about awareness. And more importantly for me, that's the thing that I want the message to be. If this can help, as we said, 1 or 2 kids, then we've done the job. And we know that it's affecting and certainly helping more kids than that in this community and others. But high school coaches, if you're interested, Mike's here. He wants to talk to you and certainly get involved. And the interesting thing for me, Randy, and you played in the NFL, he's getting calls because this speaks to young men. This speaks to young adults, right? He's getting calls from NFL teams to say, hey, we want to hear your message. Come speak to us. So he's with the Rams. He's speaking to other NFL teams. That tells you the scope of this and the understanding of, hey, guys, we talk about it all the time. Young men getting money and doing things and hanging out, and all of a sudden you lose sometimes perspective, and maybe this can help.
Life lessons, Carl. You have a short amount of time of playing a professional sport, but you have your whole life to live. And this is what just listen to what he's saying, and I know everything you're talking about. Nick can be so intimidating until you get to actually just sit there and just talk to Nick. And Nick is such a good man, and I owe a lot to Nick because he did a lot for me. But this is just unbelievable. And I know that when these young players, especially when you talk to the young rookies, they see that this could have been me at any point in my life. And you're going to make mistakes as a youngster, but it's all about how you grow and learn from those mistakes.
So with that said, is there anything else as far as the info you want people to know about? And I know you're going to be out at SEC Media Week next week and making your rounds on Radio Row and whatnot, getting the message out there across the SEC world. But is there anything else that you want people to know about?
Yeah, I think in closing, there's two things. One is when people make donations or get involved to help a nonprofit, it's good to tell them where their money goes. And quite frankly, the schools that invest in the curriculum on a per-student level where they each get a workbook and they go through it, the goal is to have that student sit down with that teacher, that coach, that principal, whomever it may be, that mentor in their life, and really open up and tell them where they've made changes because of this curriculum and the stories of Philip's life. And the mentors and teachers that analyze their kids and say, wow, you've done a magnificent job, Johnny, and here's demonstrable ideas. You need to go to the Lutzie43 website where we will put up the scholarship element and learn how they can submit an essay. And we're going to put a template there. There's going to be a series of $4,300 scholarships put out there. So when you run in the race for $43, everything is tied back to Philip's number 43. The net proceeds are going to go to funding the scholarships, towards funding the curriculum and getting that curriculum into schools, not like Lassiter that can afford the curriculum, but some of the inner city Atlanta schools or Birmingham city schools. So I think that's important. And then I think the final message to me is, Carl, people ask me all the time, Mike, well, what are you trying to accomplish? And candidly, I'm an arrogant guy when somebody says, Mike, if you save one life, I say, hold on, Philip's life was a lot more worth than one life. My goal is to get some kids that are doing things wrong, whether it's drugs or sexual expectations of their girlfriends, or it's just not having love in their heart, not holding a door. It's nothing like that. If I can get them to step back and evaluate, I'm not arrogant enough to think I can get them to stop, but if I can get them to step back and evaluate, the thing I am arrogant about, though, is if I can get the friend that's not doing those things to step back and go shoulder to shoulder with them, and if Randy's doing something he shouldn't do and we're buddies, I can say, Randy, I don't care that you're going to 4-letter word me. I'm going to care that you're going to not want to be with you. I'm not going to let you do this. Because now I think you got two minds thinking about one, and that one isn't thinking right because they're doing some things they shouldn't do. And believe me, I'm a sinner like everybody else. I've had very few instances where I've gone through this, and somebody could look at me and say, I've never done any things that contributed to your son's passing. We all make mistakes. I've asked myself many times, why me? Why haven't I? With some of the dumb things I did in my college days. But that's my goal. If I can get that person, that kid, that teacher to step back and evaluate, am I making a difference? Should I be doing some things I shouldn't? But get that friend that's not. Because in the sports, as you know this, and I use the analogy all the time, a play signaled in from the sideline for offense, and 10 players do their job, and that one player doesn't, that can still result in a 5-yard loss. And nobody on that team says, let's kick this joker off the team, let's run over sidelines, coach, get rid of him. They police themselves in that huddle. It happens in all sports, and we do it. But then we get into the game of life, and we back down because we don't want to be soft or the outsider or the one that's different. And that's my whole message. If Philip had stepped up that day, or some of his friends, and said enough is enough, I wouldn't be on your radio show. But I am on your radio show. So that's the message. Where's the money going to go, and how are we using it? Visit our website.
Sure.
We've got a great group out in closing, Knight Edie Sports Group out of Birmingham, that's done a wonderful job for us. I'd be remiss if I didn't say our friends at Kia didn't step up big time to help us sponsor the golf tournament, sponsor this race, sponsor a K through 5 special needs field day that we did back in April in the south side of Cobb County. Terry Mahoney at Kia on the southeast region, and Cobb County Kia, and then Ed Broyles Kia, just done a phenomenal job for us. And we just keep getting help left and right.
Mike, thanks for coming in. It's a story that I wanted you to tell for those folks who weren't familiar with it, and certainly now that you are, what are you going to do? We have choices to make, so I hope you get involved. Again, the website, Lutzie43.org. We'll talk to you soon, and we'll keep everybody informed of what's going on.